as you requested. Total 60 gallons.
Genuine Kansas City bourbon.
In 1956, a movie changed science fiction forever, but almost nobody was supposed to see what they filmed. Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer spent a fortune on a robot that later sold for $5 million, hired Disney animators to create a monster you'd barely see, and built sets so massive they accidentally bankrupted their own budget. Forbidden Planet wasn't just another flying saucer movie. It was Hollywood's first serious journey beyond the stars, powered by sounds that had never existed before, hiding secrets in every frame. Here are 15 shocking facts about the film that made Star Trek possible. Number 1. Earth people travel beyond the stars for the first time on film. Let's start with what makes Forbidden Planet genuinely groundbreaking. This wasn't just another alien invasion story set in someone's backyard. For the first time in Hollywood history, humans built their own faster-than-light starship, the C-57D, and traveled to a planet orbiting another star. Not Mars, not the moon. An actual alien world, 23 trillion miles from Earth, orbiting the star Altair 4. Before Forbidden Planet, science fiction meant monsters landing on Earth or rockets barely making it to our nearest neighbors. But MGM said, what if we're the explorers? That single decision elevated the entire genre from B-movie schlock into something that respected its audience's intelligence. We weren't victims anymore. We were cosmic pioneers, and that shift, that's why this film matters more than you think. Number 2. A score made without any conventional orchestra. Now, imagine you're in a 1956 movie theater. The lights dim, the MGM lion roars, and then, nothing you've ever heard before. No violins, no trumpets, no orchestra at all. Just electronic pulses, otherworldly whistles, and sounds that feel like they're coming from inside your own nervous system. Louis Barron and B.B. Barron created the first completely electronic film score in mainstream cinema. They didn't use synthesizers, those didn't exist yet. Instead, they built custom circuits, recorded their electrical death throes, and manipulated magnetic tape by hand. MGM was so confused by what they'd created, they couldn't even call it music in the credits. It's listed as electronic tonalities. The musicians' union wouldn't allow it to be called a score because no traditional musicians were used. But here's what the Barons understood. Forbidden Planet needed to sound like 2257 AD. Every bleep, every hum had to remind you that you were 23 trillion miles from home. And it worked. Those sounds became the template for every sci-fi film that followed. Number 3. The robot with personality and an attitude. Robbie the Robot wasn't supposed to be the star. He was supposed to be a prop. A walking toaster that carried luggage and mixed drinks. But something happened during production. Robert Kinoshida's design was so expressive, so full of personality, that Robbie became the breakout character of the entire film. He's 7 feet tall, weighs over 300 pounds, and can speak 88 languages. But more importantly, he has attitude. When Commander Adams asks him to make 60 gallons of bourbon, Robbie doesn't just comply. He questions the order with perfect deadpan timing. When told to manufacture an evening gown, he does it overnight, complete with emeralds. He's helpful, but he's got standards. Robbie got his own credit in the opening titles Unprecedented for what was essentially a costume with an actor inside, and audiences noticed. Fan mail poured in, not for the human stars, for the robot. MGM had accidentally created the first truly beloved android in cinema history, and wait till you hear what he cost them. Number 4. Massive budget prop and iconic auction price. $125,000. That's what Robbie the Robot cost to build in 1956. To put that in perspective, that was 7% of the film's entire $2 million budget. For one prop, MGM could have hired another star, built additional sets, or funded weeks of additional filming. Instead, they spent it on a walking, talking robot. Studio executives nearly had a collective heart attack when they saw the bills. But here's the thing, they were right to spend it. Robbie's design was so iconic, so perfectly realized, that he became more valuable over time. In 2017, one of the original Robbie props sold at auction for $5.3 million. Not adjusted for inflation, actual dollars, making him one of the most expensive film props ever sold. That 7-foot metal man became worth more than most of the actors' entire careers. Sometimes the crazy financial decisions are the ones that define film history. Number 5. Inspired by Shakespeare, really. Here's something that blew my mind when I first discovered it. Forbidden Planet, with its flying saucers, death rays, and monsters from the id, is actually William Shakespeare's The Tempest set in space. Think about it. A brilliant man exiled to a remote island, or in this case, a remote planet. His innocent daughter who's never seen other humans. A servant creature, Ariel, becomes Robbie the Robot. Mysterious powers that seem like magic, but might be something darker. Even the plot beats match. Visitors arrive, the daughter falls in love, the father's jealousy and rage manifest as supernatural threats, and ultimately he must give up his power to rejoin humanity. Cyril Hume, the screenwriter, never explicitly stated it was an adaptation, but scholars have mapped every major character and plot point directly to Shakespeare's final play. MGM took humanity's greatest playwright and launched him 23 trillion miles into space. That's not just clever, that's ambitious in a way that most modern blockbusters wouldn't dare attempt. Number 6. Entirely shot on studio sets, no real exterior planet scenes. You're looking at an alien world, pink and orange skies, 2 moons hanging in the atmosphere, vast, impossible architecture stretching to the horizon, ancient Krell laboratories carved into rock, and absolutely none of it is real. Not one frame was shot outside. Every single exterior scene in Forbidden Planet was created inside MGM's Culver City soundstages. Those sweeping vistas, matte paintings by Irving Bloch and Joshua Meador, the alien landscape, carefully constructed sets with forced perspective. Even the sky was painted on massive backdrops, lit from behind to create that eerie, otherworldly glow. This wasn't a limitation. This was a choice. MGM wanted complete control over every visual element because they were creating something nobody had ever seen. You can't film an alien world on location, so they built one from scratch. And the craftsmanship shows. 69 years later, those sets still feel more convincing than a lot of modern green screen work. Sometimes practical is simply better. Number 7. The monster you mostly never see in it was animated by Disney veterans. The monster from the id is arguably the most terrifying creature in 1,952nd cinema. It tears through a foot-thick steel door like tissue paper. It kills armed men with a single swipe. It shrugs off blaster fire that could vaporize a human, and you almost never see it clearly. Joshua Meador, on loan from Disney, animated the creature using a technique that still looks unsettling today. He drew the monster in pencil on translucent vellum sheets, then filmed it in negative so it appeared as a glowing outline. The footage was tinted red and composited over live-action plates. The result? A creature that's visible enough to be horrifying, but transparent enough to feel impossible. It's there, but not there. A nightmare given partial form. And here's the brilliance of it. Because you can't see the monster clearly, your brain fills in the details. It becomes whatever scares you most. When it roars, when it attacks, when it flickers in and out of visibility, you're watching psychological horror disguised as a science fiction movie. Dr. Morbius says it best in the film, "Monsters from the id, from the subconscious mind." The monster isn't just invisible because of technical limitations. It's invisible because that's what makes it real. Number 8. Miniskirt scenes sparked censorship. Anne Francis as Altera Morbius wore costumes that caused international scandal. Her high-cut, short-skirted outfits were considered shockingly revealing for 1,956. Remember, this was an era when married couples on television slept in separate beds, and the word pregnant was banned from broadcasts. The Spanish censorship board took one look at Forbidden Planet and banned it outright. Not for violence. Not for its themes about the dangers of unchecked power or Freudian psychology. No, they banned it because Anne Francis showed her legs. The film remained banned in Spain until 1967, 11 years after its release. It's almost funny now, looking at those costumes. By modern standards, they're tame. But in 1956, seeing a woman dressed like that, especially in a big-budget MGM production, was genuinely shocking. Forbidden Planet was pushing boundaries in every direction, even the ones that seem ridiculous in hindsight. And Spain's censors proved the point better than any review could. This film was challenging everything. Number 9. The film that made the flying saucer routine plausible. Flying saucers were everywhere in 1,952nd cinema. Cheap, easy to film, and instantly recognizable as alien. But they were almost always the bad guys' ships, the invaders. The threat. Forbidden Planet flipped that script. The C-57D isn't sleek or beautiful. It's a military vessel, functional and imposing, with a wide disc shape that makes engineering sense for artificial gravity. When it lands on Altair 4, you believe humans built this thing. You believe it traveled 23 trillion miles. Most importantly, you believe the crew when they say they're explorers, not conquerors. That credibility mattered. Before Forbidden Planet, science fiction meant defending Earth from invaders. After Forbidden Planet, it meant exploring the cosmos in ships we built ourselves. Star Trek's USS Enterprise? That's a direct descendant of the C-57D. Every spaceship that carries humans into the unknown owes something to this film's decision to make the flying saucer ours. Number 10. Influenced the creators of Star Trek and beyond. Gene Roddenberry watched Forbidden Planet and saw the future of television. A crew of explorers, a mission to seek out new worlds, a ship that represented humanity at its best, venturing into the unknown. Sound familiar? The connections between Forbidden Planet and Star Trek are everywhere once you start looking. The C-57D becomes the USS Enterprise. Dr. Morbius's isolation and obsession echoes in dozens of Trek episodes. Robbie the Robot's loyalty and personality paved the way for Data. Even the Enterprise's registration number, NCC-1701, contains a deliberate nod, C-57D reversed and reimagined. But it's deeper than surface references. Roddenberry understood what made Forbidden Planet work. It treated science fiction as a vehicle for exploring big ideas. The monster from the id isn't really about a monster. It's about what happens when brilliant people gain power they're not psychologically ready to wield. That's the template for the best Star Trek episodes. Forbidden Planet proved that science fiction could be smart, thoughtful, and successful. Without this film, there might not have been a Trek. Number 11. Budget over. Run sets built before budget department realized. Here's a story about ambition trumping accounting. Art director Arthur Lonergan and his team started building the massive Krell laboratory sets before getting final budget approval. We're talking about enormous structures. The Krell furnace alone was several stories tall, with working machinery, catwalks, and lighting effects that took weeks to install. By the time the MGM budget department realized what was happening, the sets were already built. Too expensive to tear down, too impressive to abandon, so they kept them. And those sets became the visual centerpiece of the entire film. When Dr. Morbius takes Commander Adams down into the Krell complex and reveals a machine that's 20 miles deep and powers an entire planet, you believe it because you're seeing actual physical scale. Sometimes the best creative decisions come from breaking the rules. Those sets cost a fortune, but they're why Forbidden Planet still looks impressive nearly 70 years later. You can't fake that kind of physical presence, no matter how sophisticated your CGI becomes. Number 12. Novelization reveals extra creepy layers. W.J. Stewart's novelization of Forbidden Planet was released simultaneously with the film in 1956, and it contains details that make the story even darker than what you see on screen. Remember Dr. Morbius's pets? The tiger, the deer, the monkeys wandering his garden? According to the novelization, they're not real animals, they're mental projections. Living creatures generated by Morbius's subconscious using Krell technology. Think about that. He's so lonely, so isolated, that he's unconsciously creating life itself to keep him company, and he doesn't even realize he's doing it. The book also expands on the Krell machine's true nature. It's not just a power source, it's a device that makes thoughts real. Whatever you imagine becomes solid matter. The Krell built it believing they'd evolved beyond primitive emotions like anger or hate. They were wrong. On the night they activated the machine, every Krell's subconscious unleashed its darkest impulses simultaneously. 200,000 years of civilization destroyed in a single night. Every one of them killed by monsters from their own minds. That's the real horror of Forbidden Planet. Technology doesn't care about your intentions. It only amplifies what you already are. Number 13. A 23rd century setting, not the usual 50 seconds and serious thematic depth. Most science fiction films in the 1,950 seconds were thinly veiled. Cold War allegories set roughly in the near future, maybe 1,980, 2,000 at the latest. Forbidden Planet said, no, we're going to the year 2257. That 300-year jump into the future gave the film permission to imagine a different kind of humanity. These aren't soldiers fighting aliens. They're United Planet's cruiser crew explorers checking on a lost colony. They follow protocol. They debate ethics. When Commander Adams realizes what Dr. Morbius has become, the conflict isn't about shooting the monster. It's about whether one brilliant mind has the right to sacrifice others for his research. The monster from the ID is pure Freudian psychology translated into science fiction. Morbius's subconscious, amplified by Krell technology, manifests his jealousy and rage as a creature that kills anyone threatening his isolation. He's literally destroying people with his unacknowledged dark side. That's not a theme you'd find in The Blob or Them. This is science fiction grappling with what humanity might become when we gain godlike power without equivalent wisdom. Forbidden Planet asked questions that mainstream cinema didn't usually ask in 1956. What happens when we reach the stars? What dangers come from within rather than without? Are we ready for the power we're creating? Those questions are why the film still resonates today. Number 14. Among the first major studio sci-fi features. Before Forbidden Planet, science fiction was B-movie territory. Cheap productions, limited effects, double-billed with westerns or horror films. Studios didn't believe audiences would pay for expensive science fiction. Why spend money on spaceships and aliens when you could make another war movie or romantic comedy? MGM took the risk. $2 million, a massive budget for any film in 1956, let alone science fiction. They assigned A-list talent, Academy Award-winning cinematographer George J. Folsey, experienced director Fred M. Wilcox, known for the Lassie films, stars like Walter Pidgeon and Leslie Nielsen before he became a comedy legend. Full studio resources, no compromises. The film proved that science fiction could work as prestige entertainment. It could attract adult audiences, not just kids at Saturday matinees. When Forbidden Planet succeeded both critically and commercially, it opened the door for serious science fiction. 2 years later, Charlton Heston would land on a planet ruled by apes. A decade later, Stanley Kubrick would imagine our journey beyond Jupiter. Forbidden Planet didn't just influence future films, it legitimized the entire genre. Number 15, still preserved for its cultural significance. In 2013, 57 years after its release, the Library of Congress selected Forbidden Planet for preservation in the National Film Registry. Their criteria? The film must be culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant to American cinema. That's not just an honor, that's a statement. Out of hundreds of thousands of films produced in American history, only around 850 have been selected for preservation. Forbidden Planet sits alongside Citizen Kane, Casablanca, and The Godfather. A 1,950-second science fiction film about a robot and an invisible monster is considered culturally significant enough to preserve for future generations. And they're right. This film changed everything. It proved that science fiction could be smart, expensive, and successful. It influenced Star Trek, which influenced modern space exploration. Its electronic score paved the way for Vangelis, John Williams' Close Encounters compositions, and every synthesizer in film music today. Robbie the Robot became an icon. The phrase "monsters from the id" entered the cultural lexicon. Those Krell laboratory sets established what alien technology should look like: massive, ancient, incomprehensible. Forbidden Planet wasn't just a movie. It was the blueprint for everything that came after. Forbidden Planet took risks that Hollywood wouldn't dare attempt today, spending a fortune on untested technology, adapting Shakespeare for flying saucers, building sets before getting approval. That's why it's still worth watching 69 years later. If you haven't seen it, fix that. And if you love these facts, hit subscribe for more forgotten cinema history you never knew existed.